Tokyo inflation declines, hinting at broader economic shifts in Japan ahead of a snap election. Kenyan smallholder farmers challenge the government's restrictive seed sharing law. And world leaders gather in Paris seeking relief for Lebanon amid Israel's continuing attacks and Lebanon's collapsing economy. Hello, I'm Neil Harvey here with the latest business and finance news for you on TRT World. Asia-Pacific markets are showing varied performances as investors focus on Japan's upcoming election and key economic indicators. Tokyo's inflation data released just before the election has highlighted slowing price growth, which could signal broader economic trends for Japan. Meanwhile, global investors are closely watching the Bank of Japan's upcoming policy meeting, adding further anticipation to market movements. And just ahead of the snap election, Tokyo's October inflation rate, it dropped to 1.8% from 2.2% in September. Core inflation also slowed, reaching 1.8%, slightly above the forecasted expectations of 1.7%. Tokyo's inflation rate is a key indicator for Japan's broader economic trends, potentially affecting the Bank of Japan's policy moves. The Nikkei 225 fell by 0.85%, Topix also down 0.89%. That marks 5 consecutive days of losses. Hong Kong's Seng rebounded by 0.65%. South Korea's Kospi saw a modest gain, 0.3%. Mainland China's CSI 300 index inched up. Australia's S&P ASX 200 climbed by 0.39. Elsewhere, Wall Street reacted to strong Tesla earnings, with the S&P 500 rising by 12.44 points. That represents 0.21%. And the Nasdaq gained 0.76%. But the Dow Jones experienced its first 4-day losing run since June, slipping by 0.33%. Tesla's earnings helped to power the S&P 500, reversing what had been a 3-day decline. Okay, let's get more on this now with Nadia Elbelassi. She's Equity Group's senior market analyst, and she joins me live from Dubai. Welcome, Nadia. So let's first of all talk about what is driving those mixed performances that we're seeing in the Asia-Pacific markets. Specifically, let's talk about Japan and South Korea. Why is it happening?
So I think markets in general, Asian markets are tracking Wall Street gains right now. We've had a slew of mixed earnings. Tesla beat quarterly earnings, which was a really good thing for markets. However, there's like IBM and several other companies that were unable to exceed the forward guidance, or at least a positive way. So this affected Asian markets. But I think in general, the most thing that Asian markets are focused on are Japanese elections right now, and what could be an end of the LDP Democratic Party after 70 consecutive years. So I think this is also pressuring markets, I think, over the top. For example, what's happening in Japan right now is that also 50% of young adults are not even voting anymore. So I think this is what's causing panic a little bit in Asian markets, but of course tracking Wall Street losses that we see since the beginning of the week, especially after the Fed has also we're pricing in a 25 basis point rate cut coming soon in November versus the 50 basis points that we were anticipating, and also the US election. So I think there's a lot of things putting stocks under pressure right now, but most of all, I think it's the mixed earnings.
The latest Tokyo inflation data, look good, down 0.4%. How will that influence the Bank of Japan's monetary policy decisions that are coming up?
I think for Japan, though, it's quite different. The yen has been losing a lot of momentum lately. After the last rate hike that we saw a little bit of push for the yen. But now that inflation is below target, 1.8% for core CPI, I think that there's no reason to hike rates right now. And with the new PM coming in, after being elected last month, he's also a bit dovish about rate hikes, and I think this is really pressuring the yen right now. So inflation still coming below target isn't a really good thing for the policy right now.
Thank you very much, Nadia. Nadia Elbelassi, she's Equity Group Senior Market Analyst. She joins me from Dubai. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
A group of Kenyan smallholder farmers is petitioning the country's High Court. They're going to try to compel the government to review a law that bans the sharing and exchanging of uncertified and unregistered indigenous seeds. The hearing is set to take place on Wednesday. Alexandra Majala is in Machakos with this report.
Samuel Wathome is preparing the land for the upcoming rainy season. For this farming family, tilling and sowing the land is second nature. Wathome has been a farmer for over 30 years, practicing ecological farming using indigenous seeds and other natural resources.
From time immemorial, farmers have been the custodians of seed. It is God-given, it's a gift from God, it is our heritage, it forms our culture, and it is what has been providing, sustaining our families.
The 67-year-old has always relied on traditional ways to diversify his crop. But generations later, the ancient tradition is under threat.
I and about other 14 farmers, smallholder farmers, have come together to challenge a law which was passed in 2012.
The legislation could make farmers in breach of the law if they share, exchange, or sell uncertified and unregistered seeds to fellow farmers.
What we are looking at is the erosion of the sovereignty of the people, and especially the smallholder farmers. And here I'm talking about seed sovereignty and food sovereignty, because food production begins from seed. So if the farmers have no control over the seed, then we are looking at a disrupted food chain.
According to Greenpeace Africa, smallholder farmers make up to 80% of the farming community. According to Nasike, the implications of this law, should it be implemented, are far-reaching.
Whoever is supplying us with the seed controls our food systems. They dictate what we eat. They dictate when we grow it and how we grow it, because most of these certified seeds encourage the use of chemical fertilizers and chemical pesticides.
As their court case continues, Wathome and his fellow farmers are grappling to understand how this law was passed.
The law is out of touch with the common man. Yes, so I don't believe that there was meaningful public participation on it.
Stakeholders say that the government needs to amend or scrap these laws that give leeway for big multinationals and profit-driven entities to control local resources.
In this legal battle filed in September 2022, smallholder farmers want the courts to compel the government to review this law that punishes offenders with a jail term of up to 2 years or a fine of over $7,700, a sum that is out of reach for many small-scale farmers.
The law has galvanized the community, and their hope lies in joining forces with each other and appealing to the courts for their very survival. Alexandria Majala, TRT World, Machakos, Kenya.
Okay, let's bring in economist Churchill Ogotu, who joins me from the Kenyan capital, Nairobi. Welcome to you, Churchill. Up to 2 years in prison for swapping seeds. It's kind of hard to understand. What's the danger this law was trying to protect people from?
Thanks. So basically, we've had a seeds law since 1972. It's only that this amendment came into being in 2012. So basically, trying to bring a bit of some standardization of sorts in terms of the seeds, and hence what is being alluded to seeds. You have to purchase seeds that are being certified, and this is basically of what is usually the case in a typical small-scale farmhold, whereby seeds are basically of the farm harvest, where you've been able to reap the harvest, and then you can now be able to get the seeds from. So it's totally at odds. So it's just that this regulation of seeds that came about, and also the hefty penalties in case people are violating that particular law. But I don't think that the enforcement has been quite tight. It's just that the law needs to be clear, that at least the smallholder farmers at least need to be let to do the things the way they've been doing since time immemorial.
As we mentioned, most of the farmers there are smallhold farmers. The country's relying on them to put food on the table. Is it something that they need to do, to be exchanging seeds? Is it a big part of their work?
Yeah, it is. If you look at it, farm inputs, seeds is a critical ingredient input for agricultural produce. And if you look at the smallhold farms, technically those are farmers who have less than 20 hectares or 50 acres of land, and that's typically 73% of all the farm agricultural produce come from smallholder farmers, 73% of that. So that speaks to a large number of farmers who are smallholder farmers now being affected by this particular law. Obviously, the concerns are that if you try to regulate this thing that has been since time immemorial, because most of the seeds that they get is typically of their harvests, but now they will be required to go and get seeds from certified organizations, which is a bit problematic because it increases even the cost of the farm inputs.
Churchill, great to speak to you. Thanks for your time. Churchill Agutu, economist, join me there from Nairobi.
Thanks.
Okay, let's take a quick look now at some of the other top business stories from around the world. Starting with antitrust actions in the fashion sector. They're rare, but they do happen. The US has blocked Tapestry's $8.5 billion acquisition of Capri, the parent company of Versace. The ruling followed a lawsuit from the FTC that highlighted that Tapestry and Capri are close competitors and that their merger could harm market competition. After the ruling, Capri's stock dropped 50%. Tapestry shares, they went up 13%. The US Justice Department has reached a $102 million settlement with the Singaporean owner and operator of that cargo ship that destroyed the Baltimore Bridge. The 300-metre vessel struck the Francis Scott Key Bridge in March. 6 people were killed, and it all blocked a very busy shipping channel. The settlement intends to recoup the money the US government had to spend in responding to the disaster and in clearing up those tons of debris. The United States has greenlit construction of a vast lithium mine in the Nevada desert. It aims to loosen China's grip on critical mineral supply chains. Once operational, the project could produce enough lithium to power 370,000 electric vehicles each year, quadrupling US production of the mineral. The mine is set to create 500 construction jobs and provide 350 permanent roles throughout its decades-long extraction period. Qantas Airways shares have increased by 1.6% Friday, reaching a record high for the second time that week. Its surge follows the airline's announcement of raised expectations for first-half domestic venue. The boost was driven by stronger than expected demand for travel and cheap jet fuel costs. The world is drowning in debt, inflation's biting hard and growth is grinding to a halt. Add in the wars in the Middle East, the slowdown in China and uncertainty over the next US president and, well, we've got a tough time for global leaders when meeting at the IMF. IMF chief Kristalina Georgieva has issued a stark warning based on all that during the organisation's annual meeting. Georgieva says that the global economy is at risk of falling into a vicious cycle of low growth and rising debt, limiting ability to tackle major challenges like jobs, income and climate change. Even with pockets of economic resilience, people around the world are struggling. You've seen it. It's everywhere. High inflation, stagnant wages. It leads to widespread dissatisfaction and economic pressure. The IMF projects global GDP growth will slip to 3.1% by 2029, well below the pre-pandemic average of 3.8%, trade becoming a less powerful engine due to fragmentation and US-China tensions. Georgieva urged China to shift its economic focus from exports to consumer spending to boost growth and confidence. Government debt, that's skyrocketing. Global debt's expected to hit $100 trillion this year, and it could equal 100% of global GDP by 2030. It's all driven by high spending and resistance to raising taxes. Despite challenges, the IMF sees potential for a soft landing, as they call it, and with inflation declining, no major global recession is expected. The BRICS summit in Russia has concluded now. Host Vladimir Putin said that the event showed BRICS countries share the universal values of peace, justice and equality. Also at that summit, the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas urged the international community to help end the suffering of Palestinians. Our correspondent Dasha Chernishova has more.
The Russian president announced the start of a new world order as he spoke to the expanding bloc, which is challenging the West. BRICS members and their future partners believe this is what the growing bloc is for. The high-level meeting in Russia's Kazan city called for reform of international institutions that lead to greater representation of the global majority.
At the same time, we consider it important for the further effective functioning of the UN to adopt a structure to the realities of the 21st century, to expand the representation of the countries of Asia, Africa, and Latin America in the Security Council and other key bodies, including those whose leaders are in this hall.
Putin also called on the United Nations to correct the historic injustice regarding the Middle East. He said the two-state solution was needed to break the vicious cycle of violence in the escalating crisis. And while leaders called for Palestine's admission to the UN as full member, Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas expressed his hope that BRICS could succeed where the UN and the West had failed.
The time has come for an end to injustice and relying on military force and prolonging the occupation. Therefore, we call on the countries of the world to implement the General Assembly's decision regarding the advisory opinion of the International Court of Justice and to oblige the occupation authorities to end their illegal presence on the land of the State of Palestine, with East Jerusalem as its capital within 1 year, as stipulated in its recommendations, and imposing sanctions on it in the event of its failure to comply, working with the United Nations and the concerned parties to hold an international peace conference. In this context, we rely greatly on the BRICS countries, which have become an influential and decisive force in establishing the foundations of international peace and security.
Despite the adoption of the Kazan Declaration, analysts say it failed to be precise and to establish specific mechanisms for investment into developing economies.
So many countries with different religions, different parts of the world, different economic systems, now have to make a consensus in different topics. And it's really hard because before it was 5, before that it was 4, and it was still hard. Because some countries have difficulties between themselves. When you come to the platform of BRICS, you have to speak about forgetting your problems between each other.
As host and chairperson, Vladimir Putin used the closing press conference to talk about Russia's readiness to restore ties with the West, provided its concerns are alleviated.
World leaders in Kazan agreed that BRICS could be used to drive international economic growth with the introduction of new financial mechanisms. And whilst the processing of new members will take time, what is already apparent is that their combined global voice is already getting stronger and louder. Dasha Cherneshova, TRT World, Kazan, Russia.
Meanwhile, other world leaders have gathered in Paris. They were hoping to bring some relief there to Lebanon. As the war rages between Israel and Hezbollah and Lebanon's economy falls apart, the international community has been stepping up with promises of support. TRT World's Malik Fouda has details.
La guerre doit cesser au plus vite.
The war must end as soon as possible. There must be a ceasefire in Lebanon.
The international community has come together in Paris for Lebanon, as the country faces one of the biggest humanitarian crises in its history. More than 1.4 million people have been displaced by the war, and hospitals are overwhelmed. And a weakened economy is on the edge of collapse.
I stress that alongside the humanitarian aspect and the efforts to assist humanitarian side, this is not enough because we must protect humanity before we help humanity. The legitimacy of nations and humanity in the world, I think, is in danger in the current times.
Lebanon's army has been hit hard by years of economic crisis. Its outdated equipment and lack of air defenses leave it poorly positioned to defend against ongoing Israeli strikes. At the Paris conference, 70 countries and international organizations pledged over $1 billion, $800 million for humanitarian aid and $200 million for military support. French authorities also stressed that a political solution is essential for lasting peace.
We can't be satisfied with a humanitarian and security response to the crisis. We must find a diplomatic solution.
Meanwhile, years of war and political instability have left the country in a fragile state. There hasn't been a president for 2 years, and this lack of leadership makes it hard to push through needed reforms. Lebanon's cash-based economy also raises concerns about corruption. Experts say this could make it hard for aid to reach those who need it.
La guerre doit cesser au plus vite.
I regret that Israel continues its military operations in Lebanon, in the south, in Beirut and elsewhere, and that the number of civilian victims continues to increase.
The Paris meeting also aimed to find ways to support the Lebanese army. It discussed helping the UN peacekeepers in the country, which included many European troops. Both the army and the peacekeeping mission say they have come under attack by Israel. And as the world rallies behind the embattled country, the road to peace remains steep. The pledge in Paris may be a start, but Lebanon is now running out of time. Malik Fouda, TRT World.
The Iraqi city of Mosul, a place that was once at the centre of the battle against Daesh, is now a symbol of resilience and rebuilding. Our team was granted rare access to explore Mosul as it recovers from recent traumatic events that the city's residents are still trying to forget. Abeda Hito sent this report.
On the banks of the Tigris River, in the heart of Mosul, sits a museum, not built by historians or curators, but by the people who lived through the city's darkest days.
Thanks God, we have really come back well from all that event, especially on the social level, because people try to continue with their life and don't stop on what happened after ISIS. All the pieces that we have here, they have come from the community. They are a donation from them. The destruction was massive after ISIS. It was about 80% in the old city of Mosul.
During its occupation, the Daesh terror group pillaged and destroyed many of the city's ancient landmarks, including the centuries-old Syriac Catholic Church of the Virgin Mary, which was massively damaged in 2017 during the operation to liberate the city.
The renovation has taken 2 years and 1 month to restore the building to its previous condition, while also protecting the special characteristics of this particular church. We collected more than 7,000 of the church's original stone pieces, and we were able to use around 4,500 of those pieces in the rebuilding process. Now the church is complete and we will open it again soon.
The revival of Mosul is not just about the past, it's also about emerging opportunities. And just a few streets away from here in the center of Mosul is a booming sweets business whose owners say they depend on Turkey and Turkey's excellent products in order to make sure that their business here is a success. Inside this upmarket patisserie in a middle-class neighborhood in Mosul, Syrian pastry chef Mustafa Sabuni, who trained in Turkey, says he hopes to rebuild his own life and use his expertise to help revive the city.
After 2018, Mosul is growing fast and we are growing too. We are also trying to improve life here too. 75% of the raw materials we use are organic, high quality and from Turkey. Our machines are all from Turkey, including the fridges, ovens and displays. The people of Mosul are very cultured and many of them who left have returned. They are always looking for high quality sweets like ours.
In a city once shrouded in black, the scars of war are fading, and the city's residents say their future looks brighter with each passing day. Obeida Hito, TRT World, Mosul, Iraq.
Economic ties between Turkey and Malaysia have been growing in recent years, with the bilateral trade volume on an upward trend. Exports from Turkey to Malaysia rose from $382 million in 2020 to almost $650 million in 2023. This relationship is seeing growth in various sectors. They range from technology through to defence. Back in 2014, both countries signed a free trade agreement, the first FTA that Turkey had inked with an ASEAN member. The deal removes trade barriers for services and goods that include machinery, equipment and textiles. Turkey's main exports to Malaysia are goods such as jewellery, hand-woven rugs and iron blocks. And Malaysia's main products include raw aluminium, palm oil and coconut oil. The two countries have also been getting closer when it comes to the defence sector. In June of this year, Malaysia signed a deal for Turkey to build 3 combat ships for the Royal Malaysian Navy. And experts say that this partnership benefits both economies.
In terms of the economy, we are looking for industries where we can go up the value chain and really go into the creation of innovation and technology. Now we see that within this strand, the defense industry is potentially one area where if we have a foothold into it, I think that will drive and really drive research and development and also innovation in other parts of the economy. With Turkey in particular, I think we are really looking at the way on how we make more, we get more value from our defense procurement. So recently, when we bought ships from Turkey, I think together with that package also are systems, subsystems that are going to go on the ship itself. And I think that will enable us to collaborate with Turkish companies, contractors and subcontractors, and try to do a bit of technology transfer. I think on the Malaysia side, to try and increase incentives, shorten time to do business in Malaysia, and really facilitating Turkish companies to come and collaborate and even set up bases and offices within Malaysia. I think that has already started, and that's the reason why I'm here. And secondly, when we talk about the benefits for Malaysia, I think we have a lot of graduates and talent in the state of Selangor in particular. We have about 180 universities. So by having industries with real practical things to solve and practical problems to solve, and I think this is where we can leverage on the strength of Turkish companies residing in Malaysia and providing them with our talented Malaysian graduates looking to implement and practice whatever they learn in university directly into industry. So I think that synergy also works. There are plans to develop an AI ecosystem for the country. We are going to be very serious and big in the application of artificial intelligence, and I think a lot of the Turkish hardware that requires AI can be developed here, can be tested here in this region as a test bed for the wider Southeast Asian region. So I think it's a win-win-win for both countries.
And that wraps it up. That is all your business news for now. Thanks so much for watching, although to be honest, the pleasure was all mine. Stick around, Straight Talk is coming up next.